When I met the new cleaning lady, I never imagined she'd shatter the billionaire CEO's silence. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It was gray and cold. The wind howled against the windows of that sterile, extravagant office. The air was thick with tension, like static before a storm. I could feel my heart racing. I had worked here for years, a shadow beneath the glimmering facade of wealth. Silence surrounded us, heavy like a fog clinging to the city. There he was, Alexander Stone. The CEO. A man carved from granite, a legend in his own right. His piercing gaze could freeze the gossip swirling around the office. I often watched him from afar, his dark hair neatly combed, his perfectly tailored suit. But that day was different. The moment she walked in, everything felt electric. She was unlike any cleaning lady I had ever seen. Her name was Mia. A sparkly blue dress hugged her curves, and her wild hair danced around her face like chaotic flames. A striking contrast to the dullness we were used to. Nobody knew much about her, but whispers floated through the office. They said she had a mysterious past, that she was once a dancer in New York, who decided to trade the spotlight for a broom. Why would someone like her take such a job? I felt the eyes of my colleagues on her, curious, skeptical. A sharp clatter jolted me back to reality. A stack of papers scattered across the floor. I watched, wide-eyed, as she dropped to her knees, scrambling to gather them. In that moment, a deep silence fell over the room. For the first time, Alexander spoke. "You should be more careful," he said, his voice low, almost a growl. I held my breath, waiting for the tension to break. But Mia didn't flinch. She looked up at him, her green eyes fierce. "And you should try smiling sometimes," she shot back, surprising us all. The room gasped like she had yelled fire in a crowded theater. I couldn't tear my gaze away. Suddenly, she was a whirlwind. She challenged him, standing tall while we all shrunk back into our corners. I could hear the heartbeat of the office, the barely contained laughter and astonishment. Alexander's facade cracked for the first time, a flicker of surprise crossed his sharp features. I held my breath. Where did this woman come from? What was she doing here? I felt an undeniable urge to know her story. A tugging at my soul. There was something about Mia that promised storms and revelations. Would she expose secrets buried deep in those glossy walls? And just like that, she waltzed back into the hallway, leaving behind a seismic shift. The air felt lighter, crackling with possibilities. I clenched my hands, heart pounding, the silence now tinged with curiosity. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The days that followed MIA's audacious entrance felt altered, as if a light had crept into the office's polished corners, unsettling everything. I found myself looking for her each day, the absence of her vibrancy causing an ache in my chest. Conversations around the office shifted, inexplicably charged with intrigue. Whispers turned to speculation, and speculation to obsession. But Mia remained an enigma, her laughter echoing in my mind, a haunting melody I couldn't shake. That week, I caught glimpses of her plying her trade, polishing gleaming desks littered with lost dreams and ambition, her movements fluid and effortless. I would often linger just outside the door, pretending to check my phone, when in reality, I craved just a moment of her energy, a sliver of wonder amidst the drudgery. I watched her from the shadows, her face lit with passion as she rearranged plants, turning the sterile office environment into a garden of hope. Sometimes, I would catch her humming a tune. Each note curled around the sterile air, battling the weight of expectation that hung like a thick cloud. Her voice, though soft, carried strength, infusing life into the gloom of corporate uniformity, but there were days when her smile slipped, when her shoulders slumped as if the world was pressing down hard. I noticed the way her brows furrowed as she stared out the window, dreaming of something far beyond the skyscrapers that towered over us. The office became a confining cage in those moments, swallowing the light she brought. In the kitchen one day, I found her alone, head bent over a sink full of dirty mugs. "Hey, Mia," I tentatively approached, the warmth of the moment urging me on. "I like your dress." She looked up, surprise flickering in her eyes before softening into a grateful smile. "Thank you," she replied, her voice almost shy now. "I have to remind myself that life can still be colorful, even with a broom in hand. That I can't imagine you with a broom," I said lightly, hoping to ease the burden that seemed to move within her. "You're so much more than that." Her laughter bubbled up, but a shadow lurked in her eyes. "That's the trick, isn't it? Some days I feel like I'm just cleaning up someone else's mess." I flinched at the weight of her words, the truth of them ringing in my heart. I watched her hands, calloused yet graceful, and felt the surge of a shared understanding, our lives interlaced by the imprints of expectations. But we were both more than our respective roles in this high-rise world. As the week unfolded, I sensed a rift growing between Mia and Alexander, further fueled by the whispers that now carried weight. He had tried to talk to her, but she had turned him down time and time again. One afternoon, as winter melted into an uneasy spring, I watched Alexander stand just outside the glass doors, his expression taut. He looked lost in the maze of his thoughts, and for a moment, he seemed to shed the mask of the untouchable CEO. I caught Mia by the water cooler, her own gaze pinned on him, an unreadable expression clouding her face. "You ought to talk to him," I said, my voice a whisper carried by the tenuous air. "He needs to hear you." "Or maybe I'm the one who's afraid of what he might hear," she shot back, her green eyes sparking with defiance. Cracks began to form. With every round of tension between them, the consequences loomed closer. I felt entwined in the chaos they were confronting, two storm-laden souls waltzing on the edge of something vast. Then, it happened. As the sun dipped below the horizon, a commotion erupted near the elevators. I rushed to the scene, my heart racing. I pushed through the crowd and gasped. There, crumpled on the floor, was Mia, her hands clutching her stomach, eyes shut tight. "Someone call 911. Came the panicked shout, and in an instant, chaos transformed into reverberating silence. Alexander dropped to his knees beside her, panic stripping away his icy composure. "Mia. Hey. Stay with me." A new tension hung in the air, the weight of uncertainty thickened. I stood paralyzed, rooted in fear and helplessness. What would happen next? As paramedics swarmed in and the world began to focus on her fragile form, I felt a whispering dread, the brink of two lives colliding, each ready to reveal their fears and hidden wounds. As the gurney rolled her away, I caught a fleeting glimpse, and for the tiniest moment, our eyes locked. In that shared panic, a door opened, revealing an unspoken connection. What would be waiting for us on the other side of this moment? The air in the office felt heavy with grief, each soul retreating into their thoughts, a collective mourning clouding the usual bustle. I had never known a silence so loud, the absence of Mia echoing through the corridors, a reminder of what had been lost in a heartbeat. The chatter of phones and clinking of keyboards transformed into a distant hum, drowned out by the chaos in my mind. I could still picture the frantic scene, the pallor of her face, the way her body crumpled against the cold tiles, but worse, the look of raw panic in Alexander's eyes haunted me. The days that followed were a blur of anxious whispers and muted compassion. Even the janitors seemed to work in quieter unison, mourning for the light that had suddenly dimmed in their workday. I found myself wandering the hallways, searching for glimpses of Mia's spirit, but all that greeted me were desolate reminders of her absence. On the fourth day since her collapse, the office received the agonizing news that Mia had been diagnosed with a ruptured appendix. I hadn't even known that such a seemingly simple condition could turn so grim. Like a specter, the idea of her being confined in a hospital filled me with dread. I stood by the conference room window, gazing out at the city, my heart aching for the woman who had unknowingly shaken the very core of my routine. "Are you okay?" A voice broke through my thoughts, and I turned to find Sophia, the office manager, watching me with a look of concern. "No," I admitted, the heaviness of my heart spilling out. Are you? Her eyes softened, revealing a shared pain. It's hard to concentrate on work when you think about what she's going through. Especially with Alexander, he's a wreck. I know, I whispered. I've never seen him like this. Sophia nodded as her own concern painted a frown across her face. He's been trying to reach out to her family, see how she's doing. He doesn't know how to handle this. No power, no money can fix this kind of pain. The idea of Alexander struggling beneath the weight of emotions felt both unsettling and strangely comforting. It was a reminder that even those high above the glass towers could feel just as lost and desperate as we did. The thought strung itself into a fragile thread of connection, even as I felt the distance between them growing. That evening, after work, I couldn't shake the need to see Mia, to reassure myself that her light still flickered somewhere, even if it was dimmed. I jumped into my car and drove to the hospital. As I navigated the sterile halls, a palpable silence enveloped me. Each step echoed against harsh linoleum, anxiety grabbing my heart with every breath. The elevator doors sighed open, and I stepped into the room. Mia lay there, small and defeated, the bed surrounded by dull walls and sterile equipment. My breath caught in my throat. She looked fragile yet regal, a warrior resting between battles, her eyes filled with determination and vulnerability. I hesitated, unsure if I should intrude upon her fragile world. Mia? I whispered, taking a tentative step inside. Her eyes fluttered open, surprise blooming on her face. You came, she murmured, the smile that tugged at her lips revealing a strength that took my breath away. I couldn't not, I responded, moving closer, the warmth of her presence igniting a protective instinct within me. I needed to see you. How are you feeling? Like I'd been hit by a truck, she chuckled softly, the laughter tinged with a hint of pain. But I hear the food here is top-notch. Only the best, I replied, my heart swelling at the warm flicker of her spirit that even suffering could not dim. We talked, sharing whispers of everything and nothing, the little joys, the mundane travails of office life, the thrill of weekend plans that didn't come to fruition. I watched as she animatedly gestured with her hands, the radiant girl I knew refusing to be extinguished by tubes and monitors. An unexpected warmth enveloped us when I glanced back at the door, noticing a familiar silhouette. Alexander stood in the threshold, looking lost yet tethered by the sight of her. Just as our eyes met, an electrical current surged through the air, and I recognized hope flickering within his gaze. Mia, he whispered, stepping inside, his voice a mixture of awe and apprehension. I didn't think I was afraid before he could finish. Mia beamed at him, the shadows that once loomed between them evaporating just a little. Alexander, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, yet filled with an undeniable strength. You came. Just then, I noticed the tiny quiver in her fingers as he approached, and my heart pounded with tension. The stakes felt higher than ever, the uncharted territory of their emotional wreckage threatening to spiral. Would they find a way to navigate the churning tides that had pulled them apart? But before either of us could utter another word, the doctor entered the room, interrupting the delicate moment. Mia, we need to discuss your recovery plan, he began, looking between us with raised eyebrows, acknowledging the tension that had shifted within those hospital walls that in that instant, the illusion of hope shattered against the stark reality of medicine and recovery. I tilted my head, feeling a tremor of uncertainty ripple through the air. As I glanced back at Mia, our eyes met and a question hung unvoiced between us. Would this be the moment they both needed to confront their past, or would it twist them further into solitude? And as the doctor laid out a stark plan, I felt a sense of foreboding, a realization dawning on me that despite the fragile flickers of connection, we were all on the precipice of revelations that could change everything once more. The tension in the hospital room swirled like the sterilized air, stifling and heavy, but filled with a simmering energy that seemed to pulse through the walls. Mia listened intently to the doctor's words, her features shifting from the warmth that had just illuminated her face with Alexander's presence to a mask of concentration, as though she were grasping for any sliver of certainty in the daunting tide of medical jargon. That I need you to follow the recovery plan strictly, the doctor noted, his tone brisk yet oddly compassionate. You're going to feel weak, and the next few weeks will be tough. You'll need help, and you can't rush anything. I recommend that. I felt myself retreating into the background, as if fading like a shadow, but I could not shake the feeling that this conversation was only the surface of deeper currents lurking beneath. Alexander remained at the threshold, seemingly caught between desire and despair, the look on his face reminiscent of a man who had just caught a glimpse of salvation only for it to slip away. Mia's eyes flickered to Alexander periodically during the doctor's explanations. In those fleeting glances, I caught glimpses of an unspoken hysteria yearning intertwined with uncertainty. Each time their eyes locked, the unvoiced questions filled the gap, but the weight of the moment swallowed their confessions whole. The doctor concluded his assessment, but I could see in Mia's eyes that she was grappling with newfound fears. What if I'm not strong enough? She finally uttered, her voice near breaking. Her vulnerability sliced through the air, and the silence that followed felt suffocating. I could see Alexander take a step forward, placing himself in that fragile space between reassurance and the fear of inadequacy. "You are stronger than you know," he said, his voice steadier than I had ever heard it. "You can do this. We're all here for you." But the hesitation lingered like thick fog, hovering over the trio. Mia studied his face, and in that moment, the world around us fell away, time suspended while the depths of their past stirred restlessly in the wake of his proclamation. I fought the urge to remind them that the world outside this room was uncertain, volatile, but it stayed unspoken like the countless thoughts racing through my head. As if sensing the magnetism between them, the nurse stepped into the room. Her demeanor was bright, radiating an unexpected kindness that drew the attention of us all. "Mia, how are we feeling today?" she chirped, breaking the heavy spell in the air. "That I am okay, I guess," Mia responded weakly, her smile returning but shaky, tempered by lingering doubt. "Just okay?" The nurse beamed. "Well, we've got a fabulous dessert coming up soon that I think you'll adore. Maybe a chocolate pudding?" She winked conspiratorially. "I swear it's the best kind of medicine." Something intangible slipped into the atmosphere, a moment of levity threading its way through the darkness that had enveloped us. The warmth of human connection blossomed, momentarily dispelling the anxiety of impending vulnerability. I felt my heart lift, gratitude swelling for that small act of kindness that reminded us all that hope often finds its way into the most unexpected corners. The nurse seemed to sense the delicate balance of emotions swirling within the room. "And, Alexander, your presence is a blessing here. I can only imagine how much it means to Mia." She turned her focus back to her. "And don't let anyone tell you that you can't be strong. You've faced this already, and you'll face whatever comes next." The nurse busied herself with checking charts and adjusting the four. The tension in the room took on a different hue, less oppressive, albeit still charged with unexpressed feelings. Once she left, the silence grew thicker and more palpable, pressing against us. I took a deep breath, aware of the anticipation crackling in the air, but before I could gather my thoughts, Alexander moved forward with a confession that surprised me to the core. "Mia, there's something I need to tell you, something I've kept to myself for far too long." His voice wavered, laced with an urgency that made my heart race. "It's about everything that happened between us before this. And oh, Alexander, not now," Mia began, but the look in his eyes silenced her. It was a mixture of vulnerability and determination, and suddenly, I realized that this moment could change everything. Before he could continue, a commotion echoed down the hall, the hurried movement of nurses and doctors stirring the ambience, pulling us momentarily from the precipice of raw feelings. Panic coursed through the air, as murmurs of code blue reached our ears, igniting a sense of urgency. The moment shattered, leaving the heavy weight of uncertainty hanging over us once again. With a swift movement, doctors rushed past the doorway, urgency radiating from them like flames. I turned to Mia, her face blanched, fear widening her eyes. Alexander was at her side, fingers brushing against hers, a silent agreement of support between them, but I couldn't shake the feeling that as much as we were here for her, the secrets lying in wait had no intention of remaining hidden, and what had started as a flicker of hope might instead ignite something far more volatile. My heart raced as I realized that we were only standing on the brink of revelation, and the wave of truth that was about to crash upon us could dismantle everything we thought we understood about each other, and about ourselves. The stillness that followed the commotion was suffocating. Only moments before, the air had filled with tentative hope, fragile yet vibrant, yet now it felt as if we were suspended in an abyss of anxiety, marooned amidst unanswered questions. The scene in the hospital hallway evolved into chaos, and we were drawn back into ourselves, into the spirals of worry and unresolved emotions that threatened to crack us open. Mia's fingers clung to Alexander's as her gaze darted toward the door, watching intently, desperately searching for clarity mixed with panic. "What's happening?" Her voice was barely above a whisper, quaking with every syllable. "The doctors will handle it," Alexander said, though the uncertainty in his voice betrayed the reassurance he sought to convey. He wrapped his other hand around hers, his palm radiating warmth despite the tension crackling between us. Mia squeezed back, but I could see in her eyes that the flicker of hope had dimmed once more, eclipsed by fear's relentless grasp. As the chaos continued outside, I felt smaller, overwhelmed by the enormity of the moment. I wanted to be the beacon of support, a lighthouse against the storm of uncertainty battering us all, but the flood of emotions roiling within me made it nearly impossible to articulate the words of comfort I yearned to share. In an instant, the door swung open. A nurse burst into the room, breathless yet purposeful. "Mia, we need to do some quick tests," she stated, her voice strained with urgency. "Please, just for a few moments." Her eyes flicked to Alexander, a silent assurance that he would remain close. Reluctantly, Mia released Alexander's hand, and I stepped aside as they guided her away. There was something gut-wrenching about watching them separate, as if the very fabric of their connection was unraveling in the tension-filled atmosphere. I could feel the walls close in around me, the weight of what was unstated constricting like a thief stealing every breath. As I settled back into the chair, the swirling emotions in the room felt amplified, echoing in the hollow space left behind. Regret gnawed at me for wanting only to bring lightness into Mia's life, yet I felt the shadows from Alexander's earlier confession stalking us all, reminding me that there loomed deeper issues waiting to surface. I wanted to be brave, to face the truth head-on, but the prospect of unearthing those hidden layers was daunting. Would Mia ever be ready for what Alexander was about to unveil? The mere thought of upheaval threatened to consume me. My heart raced, pulsing with fear and empathy, sensing that their journey was intertwined with my own fragile core. It felt like hours passed before Mia returned, a fragile smile attempting to bridge the distance between fear and courage. Alexander stood close by, an anchor amidst the chaos, though his brow furrowed with concern. I could see the traces of worry etched upon his features, but it was a fleeting expression. When their eyes met, though, something shifted. Pain and longing wrapped around the unbreakable bond they shared, holding them both captive just beneath the surface. "Are you okay?" he asked gently, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah, just tired," Mia replied, the veneer of her strength cracking ever so slightly. Then a familiar figure entered the room, an unexpected face that stole the air from my lungs. Rosalind, the new cleaning lady who had recently started at the hospital. Her presence, a stark contrast to the medical professionals who filled these halls, was like a breath of fresh air layered with enigmatic depth. Rosalind approached with an unassuming grace, her eyes kind yet penetrating. "Just wanted to check in. How are we holding up in here?" It struck me then the unlikeliness of her appearance at this moment, and yet, in the midst of our tangled emotions, her warmth radiated like sunlight breaking through heavy clouds. Without skipping a beat, she began tidying the room with an effortless grace that demanded attention, lending moments of unfolding intimacy that momentarily took away from the weight we carried. "I brought some treats from the kitchen," she said, pulling a small basket from behind her. The radiant colors of assorted fruit and sweets seemed almost surreal. Life has its challenges, but a little sweetness can go a long way. Mia's eyes widened. There was a flicker of joy that the busy nurses and doctors had not ignited. "Thank you." Her smile, genuine despite the turmoil, felt like a balm enveloping the room. "Some energy for the brave fighter," Rosalind said softly, a knowing gaze directed toward her. "And for you too, Alexander." I couldn't help but observe the way Rosalind's kindness reached beyond the surface, healing in a way words sometimes failed to achieve. In that moment, a bond started to weave through us, an unspoken understanding that we were bound together in ways we could not yet perceive. But just as a glimmer of serenity settled over us, Rosalind's expression shifted, attention shifting back toward the open door. "You're needed, my friend," she murmured, pointing to a couple of nurses calling her outside. As she left, the air took on a weighty stillness once more. My chest tightened as I caught Alexander's gaze. His struggle, the pull of his past weighed heavily upon him like an anchor. And then, without warning, he turned to Mia, and I could feel the collision of everything they were about to confront. Mia, there's something I need to tell you about my family and what I've hidden from you. A jolt of panic coursed through me, my heart racing as uncertainty wrapped around us all once again. Would the truth he was about to reveal bring us closer together or tear us apart? My breath caught in my throat, teetering at the edge of revelations that threatened to reshape everything we thought we knew. The tension in the air grew heavier as Alexander's words hung suspended between us, shimmering with potential and danger. I felt as though the ground beneath us had cracked open, revealing a chasm of fear and unspoken horrors. MIA's expression shifted, her earlier flicker of strength replaced by uncertainty. I could sense her heart race alongside mine as the reality of our situation crashed around us. What was Alexander hiding that was so immense it couldn't be shared until now? Alexander, wait, she said, her voice trembling. What do you mean? He took a deep breath, his jaw tightening with the weight of what lay ahead. There's a darkness in my past that I haven't fully shared with you, things that could change everything. As he spoke, I noticed how the room seemed to shrink, bearing down upon us with an oppressive weight. The promise of Rosalind's unexpected kindness faded, leaving only the three of us buried under a deluge of unsaid fears. Mia struggled to hold his gaze, searching for the boy she had fallen in love with, the man she had sought solace in amidst the chaos. Whatever it is, we can face it together, she whispered, though doubt shadowed her eyes. Alexander's lips pressed into a thin line. It isn't that simple. It could hurt you more than you realize. His voice cracked, revealing glimpses of vulnerability that were foreign to him. I'm not afraid of the truth. I've stood by you, she asserted, trying to infuse her words with courage she didn't quite feel. Our emotions cascaded through the room, intertwining like vines, each strain tugging at the heart of our uncertainty. As the silence deepened, my mind fractured, overwhelmed by the weight of unvoiced fears. It was as if time had stopped, leaving us trapped within our own fragile echoes, each heartbeat an affirmation of everything we had to lose. Then, unexpectedly, the moment was pierced by a voice, a female doctor stepping into the room with a clipboard in hand, bringing a new rush of urgency. I'm sorry to interrupt, but we need to check MIA's vitals again. Please, I'll need you both to step outside for just a moment. I felt an instinctive wave of frustration rise within me, the simmering urgency of what we had been forced to confront interrupted by yet another layer of complication. Can't it wait? I blurted out, unwilling to let them follow their own paths while our connection hung in the balance. But the doctor merely shook her head. Every moment counts. We're trying to ensure she's stable. Reluctantly, we stepped into the hallway, the sterile scent of antiseptic and the distant sounds of beeping machines enveloping us, a harsh contrast to the intimacy of our earlier conversation. But before the door closed behind us, I caught a glimpse of MIA's eyes filled with uncertainty yet fierce in resolve. As we waited for the doctor to finish, an unsettling quiet collected around us, amplified by our shared concerns. What would Alexander reveal? Would it shatter the fragile foundation of trust they had built? Do you think it'll be okay? I asked, trying to grasp onto some semblance of hope amidst uncertainty. Alexander turned towards me, the flicker of anguish in his gaze more pronounced than ever. I don't know, he admitted, running a hand through his hair, which was beginning to show signs of wear. Part of me wants to protect her from what I've done, from what I am. But there's a piece of me that knows I can't keep hiding. I owe her the truth even if it breaks us apart. His voice trembled as he spoke, vulnerability painting his features with shadows deeper than I had witnessed before. I understood the internal war brewing within him, the struggle between love and the desire to shield those we care for from pain. Maybe we can just be there for her together, I gently suggested, though unease gnawed at me. I knew that whatever was to be revealed would irrevocably change our lives. Just then, a familiar figure emerged from the depths of the hallway. Rosalind. She carried an air of quiet strength, a grounding force that seemed to defy the chaos that had overtaken us. Our eyes met, and for a fleeting moment, I felt as if she saw through my facade, recognized the tumultuous storm within my heart. Can I share something? She asked, her voice soft but saturated with intensity. Neither Alexander nor I were prepared to respond, both caught in the crossfire of our emotions. Without waiting for an answer, Rosalind stepped closer, her expression serious yet compassionate. Sometimes the hardest truths bring about the greatest transformations. They ensure that the burdens we carry don't sink us entirely, but rather, help us rise. I was taken aback by her insight, the weight of her words echoing through my troubled mind. What did she know that we didn't? The hope for understanding burgeoned in the shadows of fear, igniting a flicker of clarity amidst our chaos, but before I could articulate my thoughts, the adjacent door swung open, offering a mere crack in our fragile reality. The doctor had returned, her face solemn as she beckoned Alexander. "We need you back in there," she said, her tone clipped and urgent that in a flash, Alexander was torn from my side, brown eyes wide with a mix of dread and obligation. Left alone, I felt a hollow ache settle gnawing at my chest. In that heartbeat of separation, I realized that while the bubbles of hope flicker in our lives, they can also burst, revealing darker truths we weren't ready to face. And as I stood there, I couldn't shake the feeling that something monumental was about to surface, a revelation that could shatter everything we previously knew, leaving us tethered to the relentless pull of fate. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I waited, the antiseptic smell swirling around me like a storm cloud. Each tick of the clock felt louder than the last, echoing in the hollow space between my heartbeats. Rosalind's words hung heavily in my mind, a mixture of comfort and disquiet. I had never been one to embrace transcendental wisdom, yet her mention of transformation struck a chord, resonating with the uncertainty and turmoil that wrapped around my heart like a vice. That I glanced down the hospital corridor, straining to catch any sign of Alexander or the doctor. The heaviness in my chest became more pronounced, breaths coming in shallow waves as I repeated the unspoken fears that had thrummed beneath the surface of my existence. What would happen next? Once the truth was laid bare, could we ever go back to the way we were? As if sensing my distress, Rosalind stepped closer. "I know this seems impossible, but trust that people can surprise you, especially when faced with their own demons." Her presence was solid, something steady in a world that felt like it was slipping through my fingers. "You love him, and love can surprise us all, but could love really conquer all?" Doubt surged within me, gnawing at the edges of her hopeful words. What if his darkness was too great? What if I lost the part of me that relied on the buoyancy of our shared laughter, our late-night confessions, and the sweet warmth of affection? Moments later, the door swung open, and Alexander emerged, the pallor of his face striking against the harsh lights. His eyes met mine, searching for a lifeline or perhaps an anchor in the tempest we were facing. But the weight of silence cloaked us, neither knowing how to bridge the chasms that had formed. MIA's stable, but he hesitated, gaze drifting down the corridor before meeting my eyes again, his expression a mask of resignation. "They might need to evaluate her more closely. There's something they want to discuss." That I nodded, my heart pounding. The slow crinkle of fear unfurling like the petals of a forgotten flower twisted with impending resolution. "What did they say? Is she okay?" Alexander lingered on his choice of words, each syllable fraught with unspoken weight, and I suddenly felt like every moment was stretching into eternity. "Her vitals are holding," but his voice trailed off, fragmented whispers catching on the edge of my anxiety. Then he turned to Rosalind, drawing strength from her understanding presence. "I need to tell Mia the truth. I can't keep it from her." "Not now," she nodded, a support that soothed some of the rough edges, though my stomach tightened at the burden of impending revelations. Just as Alexander was about to step back inside, Rosalind placed a gentle hand on his arm, a gesture that felt imbued with more than mere comfort. "Make sure she knows she isn't alone. The unknown can be terrifying, but you are greater together than apart." With that final piece of wisdom, she stepped aside, giving him room. There was a glimpse of something forging between them, an unspoken respect for the trials that awaited. I unexpectedly felt adventurous, like I was on the edge of a precipice, teetering above the unknown below. "Alexander," I called, my voice surprisingly strong despite the quiver of my heart. "Whatever it is, I'll be there with you. We'll face it together." He flashed a small smile, a flicker of hope igniting amidst the gathering shadows. "I'm scared, Mia. But we'll take it one step at a time." As he turned to go inside, I could sense the weight of the moment almost crushing him. My mind morphed into a cacophony of what-ifs, each thought spiraling into the depths of anxiety. Then, in a moment of impulsive courage, I reached out to Rosalind. Do you think the truth really can change everything?" "I believe it can," she replied quietly, her gaze searching mine. "But change is often painful, and it sometimes reveals more than we bargained for." I met her honest expression, finding solace in knowing someone else understood the veiled horror of uncertainty that loomed large. "Thank you for being here," she reached. out and squeezed my hand, an unexpected warmth in the chilling abyss that surrounded us. You illuminate the path for him. Don't let fear snuff out your light. Just as those words settled within me, the door opened once more, the doctor reappearing with a new gravity about her. Mia is asking for both of you, she stated, but her words were tinged with an urgency that made my heart sink. We need to prepare for something. What had changed? My thoughts spiraled out of control, anxiety clawing at my insides. I looked to Rosalind, her character unflinching even in this detour, and I felt a small swell of appreciation for her steadfastness. Stay close, I whispered, hoping the words would tether both of us to the ground as we faced what lay ahead. The three of us walked toward the room where everything would unravel, the door creaking open like the whisper of a long-held secret. As I stepped inside, a chill shot through me, but the sight of Mia lying there alive and fragile brought a sweet tenderness that mingled with dread. But as I took hold of her hand, the lines of her forehead creased with concern, a shadow flickering in her gaze. I heard the doctor mention something. Just as the silence settled around us, thunder erupted outside, rumbling through the building like a harbinger of chaos. The lights flickered ominously, and suddenly a distant, droning hum filled the air, a stark resonance that clawed at my senses. And amidst this uncertainty, with shadows lurking on the edges of our reality, I felt a truth loom larger than ever, unfurling like a storm, a revelation that could irrevocably alter not just our fates, but everything we thought we understood. The storm that brewed outside mirrored the tempest of emotions swirling within me. The lights flickered again, casting ominous shadows that danced along the walls of the dim room. I held Mia's hand tightly, her warmth a reassuring beacon amid the chaos that threatened to envelop us all. Her eyes, though clouded with concern, held a flicker of the stubborn spirit that had always inspired me. Mia, I managed to whisper, my voice trembling slightly. Whatever the doctor has to say, we'll face it together. Always. She nodded, but her guarded expression hinted at the fears we both tried to quell. The doctor stepped deeper into the room, her presence slicing through the heavy air. Mia, there are some results we need to discuss, results that could change your treatment plan moving forward. Mia's fingers tightened around mine, her grip a silent plea for reassurance. I caught a fleeting glance at Rosalind, whose own worry was masked beneath a calm facade. It was as if she could sense the ripples of change that pulsed through the air, an anxiety echoing in her eyes. The doctor glanced over her clipboard before meeting Mia's gaze, an intensity in her posture that sent a shiver down my spine. We've had some initial tests come back. We need to be transparent. There are complications. There's a possibility of a secondary issue that we weren't initially aware of. At those words, the world around me faded, the bated breath of resignation clung to me like a suffocating cloud. What kind of complications? I asked, my voice strained and barely above a whisper. She hesitated, a moment pregnant with implications. It could be a reaction to the medication, or it could involve a complication with her immune system. Mia's face paled, her brow furrowing deeper as the weight of reality settled on her shoulders. What does that mean? She asked, her voice firmer than I felt. It means we need to act quickly. We have a few options, the doctor replied, shifting her gaze between Mia and me. But the timeline is critical. The air was thick with unspoken fears, and I could feel the tremors of dread curling around my heart. Each heartbeat amplified the urgency of the momentous countdown to decisions that held the power to change everything. Mia, you are not alone in this fight, I stressed, squeezing her hand. We will find a way through it too. We'll find answers. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, casting more shadows that shveered into the corners of the room. A loud thunderclap echoed, rattling the doorknobs slightly as if the universe were on the verge of releasing its fury. In that moment, a nurse rushed in, breathless and wide-eyed. There's a significant storm affecting the entire block. We may need to transfer patients to the lower levels for safety. Before I could comprehend the implications, Mia's expression shifted from concern to urgency. I can't if there are tests, the nurse interjected gently. Your safety is the priority, and the test results can wait a bit. We need to keep everyone calm. As if in a synchronized dance with fate, the lights blinked out, engulfing us in darkness. A moment of stillness wrapped around us before an emergency light flickered on, casting eerie shadows that seemed to live. Mia. I called, my heart racing as I felt her grip loosen. "I'm here," she responded, though her voice quivered slightly. "But this darkness, it feels suffocating." Then, brighter than the flickering lights outside, a small glimmer of hope caught my eye as Rosalind stepped forward, her aura undiminished by the chaos around us. "We are not defined by these challenges, Mia. Hold on to your strength. Remember the light you carry within." But that luminous hope collided with the uncertainty that was growing heavier just as I thought all was lost. A distant, echoing voice broke through the suffocating silence. "Is anyone in here?" I turned, only to see a figure entering the doorway, their silhouette barely discernible against the dim light. "I'm sorry. I'm trying to find patients in rooms," the figure stammered, the tremor of their voice evident. As the inkblot darkness melted into the flickering glow, I recognized the cleaning lady, her worn face etched with kindness, but something deeper within her gaze suggested she was more than a comforting presence. I heard the announcement. "Are you okay?" she asked, her caring demeanor wrapping around us like a warm quilt. "It's a lot to process," Mia whispered, breathless yet determined. "And the storm, I've weathered storms in my life, and they led me to the most important truths," she said, her voice gentle yet powerful. "Sometimes, in the darkest moments, we find connections that change us forever. Don't underestimate the strength of your bonds." With those words, a fire ignited in me. All the uncertainties, the looming shadows, they felt less daunting. And yet, as we collectively braced for the storms ahead, a new thought settled heavily into the pit of my stomach, a secret ID kept from Mia, one I now felt compelled to unearth. Just as I opened my mouth to share, a blaring alarm shattered the moment, echoing through the hallways like a harbinger of fear. The lights blinked back on at that instant, revealing that familiar urgency etched across the nurse's face as she rushed to the doorway. "Everyone, we need to evacuate now. There's been a critical failure in the upper levels. Please follow the emergency lights." At that moment, I knew this wasn't just about the storm outside. Our entire world was on the brink of unraveling. And with the weight of unspoken truths pressing on my heart, I realized that bravery would demand more than just facing MIA's illness. It would require me to confront the hidden truths that I feared sharing most. I looked around at my friends, MIA's eyes wide, Rosalind steady, the cleaning lattice warmth unwavering, and felt the first tremors of courage surfacing within me. Yet, as we turned to evacuate, a sudden crash echoed from down the hall, a reminder that the storm wasn't just above us, but also within. As we stepped forward into the uncertain night, I knew one truth above all. We were not merely fighting to survive the darkness. We were reaching for the light, no matter where it might lead us, or what truths it might reveal. The chaos swirled around us as we followed the nurse into the dimly lit corridor, the emergency lights casting a hesitant glow over the walls. Each hurried step echoed, a stark reminder of the urgency clinging to the air. Mia clung to my hand, her pulse racing in unison with mine. Every fiber of my being screamed with the need to comfort her, to reassure her that everything would somehow be okay. But the unshakable weight of my secret loomed ominously, ready to unleash its turmoil at any moment. As we navigated the twisting hall, I couldn't shake the feeling that the storm raging outside had somehow found its way within these walls, breaking through the fragile calm we had constructed around ourselves. The distant roar of thunder served as an unsettling reminder of fragility that enveloped us all. For every step we took towards safety, the shadows of doubt wrapped tighter around my heart. The cleaning lady, whose name I still didn't know, had lingered a moment, and while I appreciated her comforting words, they felt like distant echoes now, insignificant against the impending calamity. I wanted to turn back to her and share what was curling unsaid in the corners of my mind, the truth about MIA's condition, but every time I thought of it, the thought clanged like a bitter rock against the gentle facade I had been building. As we pushed through emergency doors and descended a staircase that spiraled into uncertain depths, I took a breath, desperate, trying to ground myself. My mind raced with possibilities, the fate that awaited us. Would we be safe? Loved ones were scattered in different parts of the hospital, trapped as storms collided with lives in invisible ways. "Mia, stay close," I murmured, my voice drowned beneath the echoes of panicked footsteps. She nodded, but I could see the storm rising behind her eyes, mirroring the tempest brewing outside. When we reached the lower level, the atmosphere shifted into a frantic buzz of controlled chaos. Medics were directing patients, each face a tapestry of anxiety and fear. Rosalind stepped closer, her calm demeanor cutting through the unease. "Well, get through this," she said to Mia, who was visibly shaken but nodded with determination. As we settled against the sterile walls, I felt the need to share the truth with them both. It clawed at me, close to bursting forth. But when I opened my mouth to speak, nothing tangible emerged. Instead, the distant sound of the crash reverberated again, louder now, reverberating through the halls and stifling my voice. The nurse arrived back, her expression tight with concern, and I felt an unsettling simultaneous dread looming over all of us. "We have to assure you, we're doing everything we can," she said, attempting to inspire calmness amid seeming forgetfulness. "But we need you to understand." And before she could finish, another alarm blared, thumping through the air like a terrible drumbeat. With that sound, I felt my resolve break just a little. Still holding MIA's hand tightly, I found my voice vibrating within me. "We need to be honest with each other, all of us," I exclaimed suddenly, as the realization of the weight we shared washed over me. "Mia, there's something I need to tell you," her wide eyes prompted me on, the shadows of fear mingling with curiosity. But just as I was about to lay my heart bare, the surrounding commotion escalated, drowning out my thoughts. The cleaning lady appeared just at that moment, her face etched with urgency. Hurrying over, she put her hand on my shoulder, grounding me momentarily. "You need to be brave, sweetheart," she whispered, her voice still resonating with that same gentle strength. "Sometimes, the harshest truths are the ones that can set us free." My breath hitched, and before I could pull even a fraction more courage, a sudden uproar erupted from down the hall. It was muffled yet distinct, the unmistakable sound of chaos, of desperate cries punctuating the already tumultuous night. Mia looked toward the source, her brows knotting in a flare of emotion. "What's happening?" she asked, shooting me a glance filled with worry. Then I felt the weight of impending revelation, seeping from the shadows. "It could be anything," I said hurriedly, my heart in my throat. "They might need our help." But just as I uttered those words, a nearby door burst open, and from within, a frantic nurse stumbled backward, fear plastered across her face. She was practically breathless. "There's a breach in the upper levels. The storm has knocked out critical power. We need all hands on deck." A shocking silence fell over us, followed by the rush of scattered decisions forming a new plan. I grabbed Mia tighter, and the cleaning lady stepped closer, as if her presence was an unbreakable anchor keeping us from drifting too far into despair. In that moment, amid the fear, the weight of my fears, and the rush of chaos, I was confronted with the most alarming realization yet. The truth I'd fought so hard to suppress now thrashed inside me like a wild animal desperate to escape its cage. If we had to face this darkness, it meant I had to share, not just for my sake, but for MIA's as well. But before I could find the words, the door burst open again, and a figure filling the doorway stood drenched, silhouetted against the flickering bulbs above. A new presence with wild eyes, brimming with urgency. "We're not alone in this. There's someone who wants to see you, Mia." The announcement rippled through the air, and all of my impending confessions hung perilously on the precipice of revelation, waiting to fall. And in that charged moment, I wondered who could possibly be found in the depths of disaster and whether or not the truth would ultimately bring us together, or tear us apart. Alexandria's eyes widened with a mix of curiosity and disbelief as the figure stepped into the emergency-lit chaos surrounding us. The figure pushed through the gathering crowd, drenched from the storms outside, but their posture was one of unwavering strength. "It's Pearl," the figure announced, and my heart plummeted to my stomach like a lead weight. Pearl was MIA's estranged sister, a name that had often echoed through whispered conversations, shrouded in a mix of sorrow and unresolved conflict. "Mia, she's here for you," the figure urged again, voice hoarse but filled with urgency. Thunder rolled outside, and I felt the room still as all eyes turned toward Mia, who froze in shock as recognition flared across her face. Every instinct urged me to reach for her hand, to pull her away from the encroaching shadows of the past, but I knew that ignoring this moment could mean damning her to face her fears alone. "Mia," I whispered, leaning closer, "this could be it. This could be the moment to heal." MIA's eyes darted between Pearl and me, uncertainty flickering over her features. The storm may have raged outside, but within the confines of this room, a tempest brewed in her heart. I dared not break the silence as we waited, hoping against hope that whatever connection they had shared could withstand the upheaval that had brought us together tonight. Pearl stepped forward, rain-soaked clothes clinging to her, but her presence consumed the space with a radiance that defied the chaos. I heard what happened, she uttered, voice wavering, and I needed to see you. I couldn't wait. As the storm lashed against the building, the tension in the room heightened, thickening with an unshakable reality. Could this meeting be the closure that had eluded them for so long? Or would it evolve into yet another fateful chapter in their twisting narrative? Mia, Pearl continued, breaking the fragile silence. I made mistakes, and she faltered, searching for the words. I never meant to hurt you. I was scared. Mia's breath caught in her throat, the enormity of their fractured history hovering above us like a storm cloud, threatening to unleash torrents of unresolved pain. Scared of what? She finally managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Scared of being similar to Mom, Pearl admitted, tears brimming in her eyes. I feared losing myself in the same cycle. At that moment, I felt the Persian Gulf of their emotional disconnect begin to crack, each fissure filled with years of confusion, misunderstanding, and suppressed love. You're not your mother, Mia spoke boldly, her voice gaining strength. You're so much more than that. A flicker of realization passed through Pearl's eyes, her own storm cloud of emotion cracking. I've been trying to fight my demons on my own, but I see now. Her voice faltered, almost breaking. I see that I pushed you away when I should have been there to uplift you. Overwhelmed with the rawness of the moment, I stepped closer, a desire to shield them both intertwining with my need for connection. You have the opportunity to mend this, I whispered, almost to myself. To anchor one another against the storm. Mia's resolve surged, flooding the room with warmth that broke through the cold remnants of fear. I need my sister, Pearl, she said, almost pleading. We've both been fighting battles we didn't understand. But I don't want to do that anymore. The air shifted as Pearl stepped forward, drowning in her vulnerability. I'm here now. Let me be the sister I failed to be. The room filled with the sound of a storm, a reminder of the chaos outside, but within my heart, echoes of hope surged. Their connection, long frayed, felt like it was beginning to stitch itself back together. In that moment of surrender, there was strength. Together, we can rebuild, I declared softly, my voice quaking, echoing the surge of courage rising in me. My own secret, long hidden and burdened with shame, begged to be aired. But first, I have to share something too. Both women looked at me, anticipation sharpening the air, but the storm outside roared, a reminder that we were bound by something larger than ourselves. I took a deep breath, bold and trembling all at once. I felt the weight of my own fears, I confessed. I have to tell you that I've kept something hidden from you, Mia. The room slowed as every breath collected in the air, my heart pounding with the weight of impending revelation. I was scared to let you in, I whispered, knowing that the truth held the power to liberate and the potential to break what was healing. I've loved you since the moment you walked into that office, but I didn't know how to be honest about it. Within the storm swirling around us, the piercing silence felt endless. But then, a flicker of something shifted in Mia's expression. I could see it, understanding blooming like a flower amidst the storm. She approached, her gaze piercing as she whispered, you should have told me. Love isn't something to hide. It's meant to be shared. Amidst all the chaos. That moment, as the rain lashed against the hospital window, and the alarms pulsed like a heartbeat around us, I felt the collective weight of our truths binding us together, impossible to untangle. Pearl nodded slowly, her emotions intertwining with the shared realization. We can lift each other up. But it involves embracing all of our truths, even the ugly ones. The thunder rumbling outside felt insignificant compared to the seismic moment building among us. I could sense the fragility of this moment in time, but I had never felt more hopeful. Mia turned to Pearl, tears glistening, and they wrapped their arms around each other, their connection reweaving in the warmth of their embrace. Let's heal together, Pearl declared, and with that, they found themselves immersed in a tidal wave of hope, of renewed sisterhood, and of the power of being seen. As I stood there, overwhelmed by the combined strength of their love, my own heart opened like a floodgate, a river of emotions spilling forth, promising 1,000 beginnings entwined with every splash of rain outside. The storm outside mirrored the chaos within, but in the sanctuary of that moment, I knew we would weather it all together. In the depths of my heart, I realized this truth's uncovered, trust reborn, a sisterhood rekindled. And sometimes, in the chaos of love, we find not just our answers, but the blessings woven through our flaws. In the end, it was not the storm that defined us, but the bonds that tethered us together. And as I looked at both women, my heart swelling with gratitude, I whispered softly, "There's beauty in our storms, and together, we break the silence to let love rain down."